I decided to do something I had never really done before. I stopped living like a tourist. And I tried to live like a local in the Philippines. No expensive restaurants. No fancy resorts. No carefully planned tourist itinerary. For a while, I wanted to experience the Philippines the way ordinary people experience it every day. And I thought it would be easy. After all, I had already spent enough time here to think I understood the country. But I quickly realized something. Visiting the Philippines and actually living like a local are two completely different experiences. When you are a tourist, you see the beautiful side. The beaches. The sunsets. The resorts. The restaurants. Everything is exciting because everything is new. But when you try to live like a local, you start seeing something else. You start seeing how people actually live. And that was where the real experience began. My first decision was simple. I was going to shop locally. Instead of going to the places foreigners usually go, I went to a local market. And immediately, I felt like I had stepped into another world. There were vendors everywhere. People were talking. Fresh vegetables were being arranged. Fruit was stacked on tables. Motorcycles and tricycles passed nearby. And everyone seemed to know exactly what they were doing. I stood there holding my shopping bag, trying to figure out where to begin. It sounds simple. But when you are used to supermarkets with perfectly organized aisles and clearly labeled products, a local market can feel overwhelming. There was no comfortable routine to follow. I had to watch, listen, ask questions, and learn. And strangely enough, that was one of the best parts. Nobody seemed bothered that I did not know everything. Instead, people helped. A vendor showed me what to choose. Someone explained the price. Another person pointed me toward something they thought I would like. And suddenly, I was not just shopping. I was interacting. That was the first thing I realized. Living like a local means you cannot always hide behind convenience. You have to talk to people. You have to ask. You have to participate. And sometimes, that is exactly what makes life feel more connected. The next challenge was transportation. I decided to use local transportation instead of relying on the kind of private rides I normally would. At first, I was nervous. The traffic looked chaotic. Vehicles seemed to move in every direction. There were motorcycles, tricycles, jeepneys, cars, and pedestrians all sharing the same space. I remember thinking, how does everyone know what they are doing? But after a while, I started understanding it. There was a rhythm to it. A kind of organized chaos, and once I stopped trying to compare it to what I was used to, it became much easier to appreciate. It was not necessarily the way I would have done things. It was simply a different way of moving through life. Then came food. And this was probably one of my favorite parts. I decided to eat what local people were eating instead of constantly looking for familiar Western food. At first, I was cautious. Some dishes looked completely unfamiliar. Some ingredients were things I had never cooked with. But I started trying them. One meal became another. And slowly, I realized something. Food tastes different when you are not eating it as a tourist. When you eat a meal at a local place, surrounded by ordinary people doing ordinary things, it becomes part of the experience. It is not just food anymore. It is culture. It is routine. It is connection. And sometimes, it is comfort. But the biggest surprise was not the food. It was the way people treated me. I expected curiosity. I expected people to notice that I was foreign. And they did. But what I did not expect was how often people would simply help. Someone would point me in the right direction. Someone would explain something. Someone would smile. Someone would start a conversation. None of these moments were huge. But together, they changed the way I experienced the country. I began realizing that living like a local was not really about copying everything Filipino people do. It was about changing my attitude. Instead of asking, "Why isn't this done the way I'm used to?" I started asking, "What can I learn from this?" That question changed everything. Because when you move to another country, it is very easy to spend all your time comparing it to home. The food is different. The traffic is different. The schedules are different. The stores are different. The communication style is different. And if you constantly compare everything, you will always feel like something is missing. But when you stop comparing, something interesting happens. You start noticing what is actually there. And what I noticed was community. People seemed to make room for each other. Families stayed connected. Neighbors talked. Small stores became social spaces. People knew each other. And ordinary moments seemed to carry more meaning. That was something I did not expect. Back home, I had become used to convenience. Everything was fast. Everything was available. Everything was designed to save time. But somewhere along the way, I realized I had started saving time without really knowing what I was saving it for. Here, life sometimes seemed slower. But that slower pace gave me something I had forgotten. Time to notice people. Time to talk. Time to sit. Time to simply be there. And maybe that was the biggest culture shock of all. I thought I was trying to learn how Filipinos live. But I was actually learning something about myself. I realized how much I depended on convenience. How uncomfortable I could become when things did not happen according to schedule. How quickly I judged something simply because it was unfamiliar. And how much I had forgotten to appreciate simple things. A local meal. A conversation. A walk. A quiet afternoon. A neighbor saying hello. These things are not expensive. But they can be valuable. And that is what surprised me most. Living like a local did not make my life feel smaller. In some ways, it made it feel bigger. Because I started paying attention again. I noticed the people around me. I noticed the sounds of the neighborhood. I noticed the little routines that I would have completely missed as a tourist. And I began understanding why so many foreigners eventually fall in love with life in the Philippines. It is not always the beaches. It is not always the weather. And it is not always the lower cost of living. Sometimes, it is the ordinary moments. The moments that do not appear in travel brochures. The market in the morning. The vendor who remembers you. The neighbor who says hello. The meal shared with someone. The unexpected conversation. The feeling that you are participating in life instead of simply passing through it. That is what living like a local taught me. You do not need to completely become someone else to experience another culture. Sometimes, you just need to slow down enough to see it. And perhaps that is why this experience stayed with me. I came to the Philippines wanting to understand how locals live. But I left the experience understanding something much more personal. I had spent years trying to make life easier. Faster. More convenient. More efficient. And somehow, I had forgotten that life is not supposed to be efficient all the time. Sometimes, life is supposed to be experienced. Sometimes, the best moments are the ones you never planned. And sometimes, the best way to understand a country is to stop looking at it through the eyes of a tourist. Live simply. Talk to people. Eat the local food. Walk the streets. Be curious. And let the country teach you something. Because when I finally stopped trying to experience the Philippines as a visitor, I began experiencing it as a person. And that changed everything. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Philippine Reality Check for more honest stories about expat life, Filipino culture, retirement, and the unexpected realities of living in the Philippines.